Morning, Addison. Hope all is well. Recording this for you. Send you the link later, so at least you can hear and see what we did today. Happy New Year, and we'll proceed with the class. We just had Colin and Neil reading their movie summaries. Good job. I hope to see yours when you come, hopefully next week. So this week, you guys started two different cultures, Rome and Israel. Now, for the next few weeks, well, few meaning 7, well, 6 after this week, I'm going to give you a little more reading than usual, okay? So what you want to do is when you get home, and you guys probably know this, but sometimes we forget, don't think, oh, I'll just read it all on the last day before class, because you're not going to, okay? What I would do is count up the number of pages, and this makes easy sense. So if you're reading 80, say you're reading 30 pages in the Dorothy Mills book, and you want to read it over the whole time. Now, this isn't really work, I guess, for that, because it's divided into sections. You might not want to stop in the middle of a section. But if you want to spend 4 days reading because you're in class today, well, we'll say you're going to spend 5 days reading because that's easy. You need to read 6 pages every day, right, to make it work. If I give you 60 pages in the Josephus book and you want to read for 5 days, right? You guys know how to do this. You need to read 12 pages a day. Okay, so I know that seems silly to show you that, but you'd be surprised, even grown-ups, you know, the number of people that have a certain amount of work to get done, and they don't stop at the beginning of the week and think, what do I need to do to get everything done? Okay, but bear with me. I'm glad that you enjoy the Josephus book. Did you say you were liking it too? Like I said, this is the first time I've taught out of this book, and I almost decided to just skip the first half when I saw how long it was. I thought, you know, I feel like reviewing Old Testament history is not a bad thing for anyone. Okay, so let's mix it up. Let's talk about our writing first up, because our writing is going to be a little bit disconnected from our reading for a few weeks because there's not a really good essay topic. But one thing that might make a nice break is to do some fiction writing. Do you guys, would you prefer writing fiction or nonfiction?
Nonfiction.
Nonfiction? What about you, Neil?
Nonfiction.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. This is not going to be as much fun for you. I mean, I agree with you guys, by the way. I'm much better at writing nonfiction. I'm not tremendously creative, but I'm not going to ask you to just sit down and make up stories completely out of your own head. But what I'd like to work on is sort of build on this idea of summarizing, being concise. Good writing doesn't use too many words, and good writing, when it's fiction, shows instead of telling. For instance, if I said, Neil came in the room and he was very angry. You're not, but we're just going to, this is fiction, right? That I would be telling you something about. But if I said, Neil stomped into the room and slammed the door, we know Neil's angry. I showed you instead of telling you. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to have you do, and you may have done this last year. I can't remember if I had to do this or not. Do the who, what, when, where, why paragraph. Did you do that?
I think so.
Okay. We're going to do it again, but we're going to do it with a different story. Okay. I'll refresh your memory, actually, instead of... I'll just hold on to Addison's. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. A paragraph, an introductory paragraph to a story, really is helpful when it tells you the 5 W's. Who is this? When do they live? What do they want? Where do they live? And why are they doing what they're doing? right? Who, what, when, where, why. So I took, and you might remember this from last year if we did this, I took the story of the tortoise and the hare, which is an Aesop's fable, which is a Greek writer. And I looked at the two main characters, the tortoise and the hare, and I embellished the story with my own details. So I looked at the tortoise and I asked myself 5 W's. I've chosen the morning of the race. You guys are familiar with the tortoise and the hare, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The morning of the big race. And I made up, do you see at the top of the paper? I made up a who, what, when, where, why. I don't have to make up a who, it's a tortoise. That's the point of the story. What is happening? He's waking up excited. I totally made that up. When is this happening? On an early spring morning. Made that up too. We have no idea when this race is happening. Where is he currently? On the top of a rock. Why is he there? Because he was too slow to get inside before the night. Because he's a tortoise. Mm-hmm. Making it funny that he's about to have a race. And here's the paragraph I wrote. Now, notice I put my dress-ups in. You guys do not have to do dress-ups, okay? Don't worry about that. On a pleasantly warm spring morning, Tommy Tortoise, oh, there's a typo, really? Awoke, stretched, and began clambering down from the rock on which he had fallen asleep the previous night. Notice I didn't say Tommy Tortoise was on a rock. He fell asleep. I made it part of the action. Feeling a sense of excitement building within him, he remembered with a start. Today was the day. He would show his skeptical woodland friends what determination could accomplish. As he slid gently off the rock, where he had fallen asleep when darkness overtook him, he began to mentally prepare for the task that lay before him. Finally, he would give that upstart Harvey Hare a reason to respect him. Now, did I include all my 5 W's? Yes, but for the most part, I didn't just say, it was an early spring morning. Did I include, okay. Did I include the spring morning? Oh, I didn't. Oh, boom. I not only had a typo, but I left out the spring morning. Okay, we're gonna add it. Oh no, I did on a pleasantly warm spring morning. I'm sorry, I did. The very first.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. Woo. Okay, so then I took the hare, the other main character of our drama, and I made up 5 W's about him at the same time. He's a hare. He's waking up tired on an early spring morning. It has to be an early spring morning because it's the same day. He's on the floor of his burrow. Why? Because he's exhausted from spring cleaning. He's so tired, which of course is a joke because it's going to make up a reason why he would stop and take a nap during the race. Here is my Harvey Hare paragraph. Harvey Hare opened one eye and peered around the burrow which he had called home for the past 2 years. After a full day of furious spring cleaning, he had fallen asleep in exhaustion on the now spotlessly clean floor. When spring hit the meadow, Harvey always felt increased energy and excitement. Combining that pent-up energy with his utter distaste for clutter, he had embarked the previous morning on a cleaning spree lasting far into the night. It was long but rewarding. Tiredly lifting himself from the floor, he opened his eyes wide as he remembered the appointment he had scheduled a week ago. Only 2 hours until his race with Tommy. I showed you. I tried not to tell you. Okay, so turn the page. Here's your story. You know it. It's the ant and the grasshopper. Which you have 2 main characters, right? Mm-hmm. An ant and a grasshopper. I want you to take the ant and then embellish a who, what, when, where, why. The who is an ant, obviously. You can give the ant a name if you want. You can give him physical characteristic. I mean, he's an ant, so I guess that's limited. What? He's going to be small. It's going to be an insect. But I want you to, read the story I'm sure you are familiar with the ant and the grasshopper story. I would like it to be the day he meets the grasshopper for the first time. What is the ant doing?
Food.
Yes, so imagine. Here's another tip. Be as specific as possible. Don't have him just gather food. Tell him. Is it grains of corn that have fallen out of the back of a combine? Is it bits of pie that Mrs. Jones put out on her windowsill to cool? Yes.
So you would like us to write more of a paragraph of describing who the ant is?
Well, no.
The character?
See what I did? You need to sit down. You're going to do something like this. This is an example. Ant. Who, what, when, where, why. Who is it? An ant. What is this ant doing? Neil's gathering food. Gathering, what kind of food do we want to be gathering?
Apple peelings.
Apple peelings. Love it. By the way, you do not have to use this example. I'm just showing you what you will do. When is this happening? What time of year? Well, when he first meets the grasshopper, it's maybe summer.
Mm-hmm.
It's summer. It's sunny. Maybe it's hot. Maybe, oh no, let's not make it too hot. Let's make it pleasant. Where does this ant live? It needs to be somewhere that gets cold in the winter, doesn't it? Where would we like the ant to live?
Illinois.
Okay, he lives in Illinois, in a field, and he has he has the best anthill on the block. Do you guys notice what I'm doing? Do you remember when we did those story summaries, those 3-paragraph story summaries? And we asked ourselves questions out of our own brain? I'm just doing the same thing, only I'm just going to do it in one paragraph. Why is he gathering food? Why is he engaged in this?
To prepare for winter.
Yeah.
Okay, to prepare for winter, and because he is wise. All right. Then what I'm going to do, Colin, is I'm going to sit down and I'm just going to weave a paragraph and make sure I include all these things. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to do the same thing for the grasshopper on the same day. What has he been doing? Oh, you could go crazy with the grasshopper because, you know, he could be laying in a hammock, sipping lemonade with a little umbrella in it. On a lot of stories, I know he's like playing a fiddle and dancing around, but hey, your grasshopper can do anything as long as he's completely irresponsible. Make sure he's completely irresponsible.
So do one of each?
One of each.
Okay.
Just like I did for this. It really shouldn't be too tough. But what I'd like you to do is see if you can, instead of saying, once there was an ant, he was gathering apple peelings. It was summer, very sunny and kind of try to see if you can weave it in and show me. When I said that he was exhausted from spring cleaning, I didn't just say he was exhausted. I said he had fallen asleep in exhaustion on the spotlessly clean floor. Go, just have some fun with it. You guys, even though you've just said that you like to write nonfiction better than fiction, you've written a lot of nonfiction this year. And I just thought this would be a nice break. Okay? By the way, did you both turn in an oral and psyche paper?
Mm-hmm.
Did I give it back to you? You already have it back? Or?
I think so, yeah.
And you didn't ever.
I think.
You didn't
remember
have
you
yours.
didn't have it.
Yeah, I forgot one.
Okay, you can bring it next time.
Okay.
But let's just take a little break from essays, and just kind of recharge our mental juices. Okay. And I will get this sent to Addison. so that you can work on that for this week. And call me, Addison, if you have any questions about that. And I'll try to get that email to you tomorrow. Okay, so the first of the two civilizations that we're going to look at. Well, first of all, let's talk about why I've chosen Greece, Rome, and Israel. What do you think? Do you have another comment?
Any dress ups for it?
You do not have to do dress ups, but feel free to do dress ups. However, don't put them in, oh, I need an LY. But if you feel like it describes the story better for you to use that word, use it. All right? Just have fun with it. Have fun with using your imagination a little bit and seeing if you can show me, not tell me. Okay, so this is us. Okay, we are inhabitants, we are citizens of what is known as Western civilization. All right, sort of a line that goes by Turkey and Israel, everything to the west of that, right? So North America, Europe. We all have a common ancestry, and you are from not Western civilization, but you are a citizen of Western civilization because you live in America, right? So ethnicity has nothing to do with this. It has to do with where you live and this type of society you live in. And it comes from three sources: Greece, Rome, and Israel. These three places make us who we are. So we spent a whole semester talking about Greece. What are some characteristics of the Greeks that you think we have as Europeans or Americans? What are some things that the Greeks appreciated or honored that we appreciate and honor?
Like their governmental system, democracy.
Okay, democracy, absolutely. Anything else? Learning, philosophy, right? Looking for the truth, seeking the truth. How about, we looked at pictures. Remember we talked about the temples?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Look how many structures we have. So architecture, sculpture, the love of the beautiful, right? So, that's right, beauty, learning, democracy.
Probably also got some heritage from them, such as things like the way they cook and stuff like that.
Maybe, probably not as much. That's because that changes so much over time. That might be more recent, European thing for some of us, or America has its own very distinctive. We're kind of a hodgepodge, though, aren't we? Of spaghetti and pizza and tacos and and all sorts of things, and sushi and so. This semester we're going to talk about these two. It ought to be easy, even before we read about Israel, to tell me what we get from Israel. What do we get from them? Christianity.
The Bible.
We get God. We don't, one God. One God. Do you know the word? There's a big long word that means believing in one God. Mono, which means one, theism, which means God, one God. Polytheism means a lot of gods. They were polytheists, right? Zeus and Hera, and so were the Romans. The Israelites knew there was one God, and they were the vehicle that prepared for Christianity, and Christianity built Europe and America. So we're going to be exploring that. Actually, let's just stop. Okay, let's just stop and talk about this for a little bit. So I told you we're reading from this Young Folks Josephus, and it has it's a conglomeration of two books that he wrote, two famous books. One, the part you're reading now, is called the Antiquities of the Jews, which is basically a review of the history, the Jewish history of the Old Testament. However, remember, this is not a retelling of the Old Testament. Sorry. This is not a retelling of the Old Testament, so things may be different. Like, for instance, it started right with Abraham, right? Because Abraham is the founder of the Israelite, the Hebrew, the Jewish race. So, and then there was another chapter where there was a footnote and it said, this is not in the Old Testament, this comes from oral tradition in Jewish history. Did you guys read the introduction at all about who Josephus was?
Not really.
It's all right, I didn't ask you to.
I think
Let me
I saw
find my
it,
glasses.
like, briefly, maybe.
I talked about it, but I just want to talk about who this guy is since we're going to spend 7 weeks with him. On page VII 7, Roman numeral 7, it says Flavius Josephus was born at Jerusalem in AD 37. He was of illustrious birth, his father being a priest, which was considered a great distinction among the Jews, and his mother a member of the royal family of the Asmoneans. So he's an important guy. He's sort of Jewish nobility. He received an excellent education and profited so well by what he had learned that at the age of 16 he was frequently consulted by the chief priests when they could not agree on difficult questions. About this time he joined the sect of the Essenes and went to live in the desert with a celebrated hermit named Banun. Now, have you guys ever heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean by that? There was, I think it was in 1948, there was a shepherd, a goat herd boy, up in the mountains around the Dead Sea. And he threw a rock into a cave or something and he heard like a crunch, an odd noise. And he went in and there were a bunch of clay jars and they had documents in them. They had manuscripts. And they were written from like the century before, the 1st century BC, before Jesus. And they belonged to a group called the Essenes. There was this Jewish sect that kind of went out into the wilderness and lived, and they were kind of like John the Baptist. I mean, they were getting ready, not necessarily for Messiah, but for something to happen. They were actually intensely looking for the Messiah. But peace, they were sort of a, there was a group of people that really fought the Romans. And these were more peaceful, like, we just don't need to worry about that. We need to worry about our lives with God. And so Josephus joined them briefly. After 3 years, he returned to Jerusalem, where he abandoned the doctrines of the Essenes and became a Pharisee. In the year 63, he visited Rome to procure the liberation of some Jewish prisoners that had been sent there by the governor Felix, was favorably received, and was successful in his mission through the influence of Poppaea, the wife of Nero. You've probably heard of the Roman Emperor Nero. Probably nothing good.
Yeah.
When the Jews revolted against Rome, he was appointed governor of Galilee, and the story of his brave defense at Jotapata and its final capture, and of his escape from death, alone among the Jewish warriors, through the intercession of Titus, has been told by himself in the Jewish War, one of the works which the following pages are an abstract. So we're going to hear about that. He fought the Romans. He was in a peace-loving sect. Then he became a Pharisee. Then he fought the Romans. Then they got holed up in a cave, and he was the only one who made it out alive. At the destruction of Jerusalem, his influence with the Emperor Vespasian procured the liberation of his brothers and 50 of his friends. It was out of gratitude for these and other favors that Josephus about this time assumed the emperor's family name of Flavius. His history of the Jewish War, finished around 75, was undertaken at the command of Vespasian, and is a noble and pathetic narrative, which means it stirs your emotions. of events that he had witnessed by himself. His other important work, the Antiquities of the Jews, was finished around 93 and was an attempt to familiarize the Roman people with the early history of the Jews as it is recorded in the scripture. And they go on to say he wrote a couple of other things, but those are the two big things. The first part of this is his Antiquities of the Jews. Remember, he's talking to a Roman audience. He's telling them who the Jews are. Remember, these are people who've never read the Old Testament before that he's addressing. Maybe they don't even know of its existence. It's like, who are these Jew people? I don't know who they are. I know we conquered them. And then the second thing is his history of the actual destruction of Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. You can see how our Roman history and our Israeli history is going to come together. Okay, so that's who he is. Now, I wanted to talk about the part that we read. How well do you guys feel like you know your Old Testament history? Like, pretty well, not so well, so-so, I remember everything perfectly.
I'd say about so-so.
About so-so? You know, what happens, well, you know, I grew up Protestant. And so in Sunday school, a lot of times, this doesn't happen in every church, but a lot of times kids will be taught stories in isolation. Like they know about Abraham and they know about Moses and they know about Daniel, but they don't know how they fit together. Do you know what I mean? Like in one, because the story of the Old Testament is one long story. It's got a plot. And when you and it's important to know the individual stories, but when you don't know how they all fit together, you don't understand how God was moving in history. And so you know what? I would like you guys to get your maps out. Get your maps out, the ones that's the Roman Empire. Okay? And I would like to talk about this Abraham guy. Abraham was living very, very, very far away from his eventual destination. I would like you guys to do a couple of things on this map. There are, wait a minute, let me look at your Roman Empire map. Okay, oh yeah, we're good. Okay, so I'm just going to come hover over you. Do you see these two rivers? It kind of looks like they meet and they come very close. I would like you to take your pencil and trace over those, okay? And ditto for you. The two, here. Do you see these two rivers? Mm-hmm. I would like you to just trace and to make them darker. And as you can, they're the two rivers here. We're going to label those because those are super important in the ancient world. And it's good to know where we are.
It looks like one big river to me.
As it flows from two different sources and they both enter what we now call the Persian Gulf.
I think I think it was the printer mistake, but I can't tell if this river just goes.
It's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. They generally start up here and they flow towards the Persian Gulf. The one on the bottom is the Euphrates. I would like you to label it the Euphrates River, and the one on the top is the Tigris. You've probably heard the Tigris and Euphrates. Mm-hmm. A lot of people believe that that the Garden of Eden must have been over there because it says there are 4 rivers that ran out of the garden, and 2 of them, the Pishon is one, I can't remember, and the Tigris and Euphrates. However, it is my opinion, only my opinion, that all of that got wrecked by the flood. and that they renamed these two rivers for two rivers that they knew from before. That's my theory. So the Tigris and the Euphrates. What kind of land is all of this? Like what kind of terrain? Do you have any idea? Like
Middle East?
Arabia and
Middle East.
yeah. Like what is it like? Is it
Deserty?
Desert? It's very, very dry. In fact, so dry that when you are traveling, if you wanted to travel from Egypt and you wanted to go to Babylon or you wanted to go for these, you would not ever load up your camels and just head out, because look at the this is 500 miles. Okay, my pin is say 600 miles. 600 miles of nothing. I mean, maybe an oasis here and there, but you're probably going to die if you just head out across the desert. So it was the practice in the ancient world to go up along the coast and then down along the Tigris and Euphrates. And you see how this makes a crescent shape? Like if you start here, kind of a half moon shape or a semicircle. Sometimes they call that the Fertile Crescent. Have you ever seen that referred to? Okay, that's what they mean. They mean the part of that world that actually has water and can grow stuff and support life, because this is just a wasteland. See this little triangle here? You know how the Red Sea makes like a victory sign or peace sign? This is the Sinai Peninsula. This is the Sinai Desert. It's also desert. You know, Moses took off and he ran off, and then he was hanging around Sinai. It's deserty, it's rocky. But you can go through it and then take the rivers. So once upon a time, oh, you know what? We're also going to be adding something to your timeline. We're just adding all sorts of, so go ahead and, if you can, like, take that out or take your timeline out or something. I'll give you time to reorganize later. I would like you to, I think you have a page that is, there's a page that starts at 2000 BC.
Mm-hmm.
And does it go to 1500 or 1000?
1000.
1000, okay. Up here at 2000 BC, I would like you to put Abraham. And we're going to add more to this timeline today too. Do we have anything else on this page so far?
Minoans and
The
Mycenaeans.
Minoans and Mycenaeans. And you know what we didn't put on there? Is the probable time of the Trojan War. We should put that on there. 1250. Trojan War. So, what was our date for the Minoans?
2000 to 1450.
Okay. So, the very beginning, do you remember who the Minoans are? They're the guys on Crete that had the weird bull obsession, right? That they had pictures of people jumping over bulls, and they dug up that palace that was actually like a labyrinth, like a maze. That's how long ago Abraham, that's what was happening in the world when Abraham was born. And he was born, the Bible tells us, and Josephus agrees. Oh, well, here, I'm going to have to write up here. At a town, well, actually, I'm not. I'm just going to spell it because it only has 2 letters. Can you put a dot sort of in between where the 2 rivers meet? It doesn't have to be in between. It can be above. Just close to the end of where the 2 rivers meet. And I want you to label that city You are. You are. Abraham, you are from Abraham was Babylonian. He was Mesopotamian. He wasn't a part of the people that lived over here at all. And why in the world then did he end up over here? What happened in Abraham's life that made him leave his nice, comfy place? I mean, he's living close to Babylon. Life is good. He's probably wealthy. Why does he get up and move over here to Canaan?
Because God told him to.
God told him to, which is a very good reason to do anything. God told him to. God chose him. Why did God choose him? We don't know. As far as we know, he would have no way of knowing that there was just one true God. The Babylonians did not just worship one God. God revealed himself to him for whatever reason, because God gets to do what he likes. And he said, Abraham, come to a new land. I'm going to give it to your family. So how does he travel? He does not go across. He goes up and around like everybody does. And you don't have to add this to your map, but up around here, there's a town called Haran. He had this is uncle Haran, Dad Terah and Haran. Can't remember. Sorry about that. And they stayed there for a while, and he left. The dad, the brother, died. Or dad or uncle, can't remember. And he continued on with his nephew Lot and his wife Sarai. At this point, he's not called Abraham, he's called Abram. And God makes Abraham a promise. What does he promise to him? Promises him two things.
A son?
Yes, he promises him a son through whom
Sarah.
through Sarah, and that his descendants through the son will be as many as the stars in the sky and the sands on the seashore. And that family, he promised something about that family. Through that family, something would happen to all the rest of the world.
You said the rest of the world will be envious or something like that?
Well, yeah, the rest of the world will be blessed.
Oh.
Through you, all the world will be blessed, because this is the family that Jesus is going to come to. So Josephus starts out his account of the Israelites there with the founder of them. Now, he goes on. Of course, I'm going to skip over because I'm assuming that you just read it if you didn't know about Abraham's son Isaac and Isaac's sons Jacob and Esau and the whole drama with Jacob and Esau and the whole cheating thing. Jacob runs off. And when they run off, they're going back, not all the way back to Ur, but back to the rest of the family that stayed behind in Haran. They're going back and forth. So Jacob runs off, brings back 12 sons, 4 wives. One of them dies, Rachel, and comes back, but there is tension between the brothers. That's putting it mildly. Joseph has a big mouth. I hate to say it that way. But if you dream that the rest of your brothers are bowing down to you, maybe you ought to just keep it to yourself. Especially when Dad just gave you a special coat. And Dad obviously loves you better than the rest of the brothers. Question. Why does Jacob feel so very extra fond of Joseph and then Benjamin? What is it about Joseph and Benjamin that...
Well, his favorite wife.
They're Rachel's.
And then they
Exactly.
also he's always obedient more than the other ones.
It seems that way. But yeah, I wonder if they looked like Rachel. They reminded him of the woman that, remember, he worked for 7 years for her. And then the sisters got switched out and he ended up with the wrong sister. And then he had to work another 7 years. She was the one he really wanted. So they end up going down to Egypt. Here's a close-up. Egypt. Let's talk about Egypt a little bit. Egypt is a weird, fascinating place. What do you know about Egypt? When I say Egypt, what comes to mind?
Pyramids.
Pyramids.
Pharaoh.
Mummies.
The Sphinx.
The Sphinx. And probably the story of the Exodus, which we read. There's a reason for that. You know, Egypt went on for like hundreds, thousands of years and just didn't change a whole heck of a lot. There's a lot of happenings going on in Greece and invaders and all this stuff, and there is change, but it's pretty static. And so I brought a couple of things. You guys saw them earlier. One thing that the Egyptians knew that was true is that life goes on after we die. They, however, had kind of a weird idea about what that life was like. They thought that you had to preserve your body, right? Or your soul wouldn't be able to recognize it and come back and forth. So they mummified people. And the first thing they did was take your internal organs out, you know, and put them in jars. I'll show Addison my jar. They're called Canopic Jars. This is the one that your stomach would go in. There is no stomach. There's only papers in my jar. Just want to let you know. This is a Christmas gift, not from this Christmas, but from last Christmas from my son. So they would put you in a tomb with these jars lying around you, and then they would read from or give you a copy of a thing called the Book of the Dead, which is all the instructions about the priests and what to do for the afterlife. This is an extra reproduction of the entire Book of the Dead. And it's got drawings, but we'll see they're getting the mummy ready, and it's the instructions for what the person is supposed to do when they get to the afterlife, when they get asked if they were a good person or not. Yes.
My brother told me, I never really understood hieroglyphics. Of course, when it was like a creature on a man, he told me that was like a god, supposedly, or something. But I was like, why is this person green? And he's like, oh, that's a person who's dead. So someone who's dead, and then they say they mummified them.
This is just a wall plaque that my son also got me. Okay, there we go. Hathor, the goddess Hathor, with the ox horns. So the Egyptians were polytheists, right? They believed in many gods. And so skipping ahead in our story of the Israelites in Egypt, eventually what was the state of the Israelites in Egypt? What was happening to them?
They were like being oppressed.
They were being oppressed. They were slaves. Now, I hate to correct Miss Dorothy Mills, and maybe at her time they thought this was true. The Israelites did not build the pyramids. The pyramids were old when Abraham went to Egypt. They were already old. But yeah, they were being oppressed. Moses rose up. And so Moses, look at our close-up here. Moses got into trouble, ran out into the desert here, and what happened to him at this Mount Sinai? Something.
The burning bush.
Burning bush. God said, go back, set my people free. Tell Pharaoh, let my people go. But he won't. Until I plague Egypt. And we get over to the pivotal moment in Israelite history, the Passover. Right? Now, do you remember any of the plagues other than the firstborn death? Like, well, give me a plague. Don't give me a plague.
The frogs.
The frogs.
The blood.
Locusts. Blood. Boils. Guess what?
The unkillable flies that like bite you.
Nasty. Darkness.
And hail.
The gods of Egypt that we see. Oh, that's not. Oh, there we go. Get it out of the. I can't ever adjust the right direction. The gods that we see in Egypt that are around here, they are There was a god with a frog head. There was a god of pestilence. There was a god of the Nile that turned to blood. Their chief god was the sun god. And they get attacked with darkness, plague, frogs. Then Pharaoh was destined to be a god too. And his son was destined to be a god. The son died, along with the firstborn of every Egyptian family. God didn't just attack Egypt. He attacked their gods. He attacked their gods. It's like, these aren't gods. I'm God. And they left. They left and met up with God again at Mount Sinai. Now, I left out a part of the story, but I'm going to go back to it later. Why? So the Israelites met with God. They made the tabernacle. Actually, I want to go back to that Passover again. Why is Passover an important event for Christians?
Is it like we're celebrating our safety from the death of the children in Egypt, or
Okay.
you put the blood on the
Put the blood. Where did they put the blood?
Under doorpost.
They put it on the doorpost.
branch.
They put it in 3 special places. They put it here, here, and here. What did they make? Here, here, and here.
A triangle.
Well, yes, but look at me.
A cross.
They made a cross. They made the crown of thorns and the hands. Boom, boom, boom. And when the angel of death saw the blood, it passed over the house. When was Jesus crucified? What week was that? What were the disciples celebrating in the upper room with him? Passover. When the Israelites had put the blood on the doorpost, it was from a lamb without blemish, that they were not allowed to break any of its bones. That was the rule, and they had to eat it all in one night. Ready to go, ready for the journey, because God knew that Pharaoh would drive them out. What do we call Jesus? He has many nicknames, but one of them is, behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. He's the Lamb. He's the Passover Lamb. And his blood, God sees his blood and passes over us. We are made new. We are made new. This is very, very important, the Passover. And when do we celebrate Easter? I mean, in the vicinity of Passover. It's not exactly at the same time. Okay. They go up to this new, wonderful land that God promised Abraham, and they're parked over here on the other side of the Jordan, and why do they not just go in? I mean, they're there. Why don't they just go in and take it over?
Because they call that they were all scared that they're too big and too hard to fight.
They were all scared, except 2 guys, Joshua and Caleb. All the rest said, oh, they're big. They have big cities. We can't do that. Hello, did you not see what God did to the Egyptians? We didn't even talk about the parting of the Red Sea, which was probably one of these, or probably not this red. That would be a long way out of their way, but up here. Hello, did you not think God can do this? They didn't have very good memories. I would like to say I have a good memory, but I fear that sometimes I forget what God can do. Anyway, so God gives them their wish. They said, oh, we're all going to die here in the desert. God said, okay, You're all going to die here in the desert. Your children will go in, except for Joshua and Caleb. They're the only ones who thought I could do it. And they did. That whole generation died 40 years in the desert, wandering around. Because they didn't trust and they didn't believe God could do it. And that's basically where our reading took us up to, going into the promised land with Joshua. Is that correct? I think so. Back to Abraham. Abraham had a son, as promised. He actually had another son, Ishmael, that Josephus doesn't tell us about, but the Bible tells us about. But Isaac is the son of the promise. And when Isaac got older, God asked Abraham to do something. Do you remember what he asked him to do? Sacrifice his son. And Abraham doesn't hesitate.
Nor does Isaac eventually.
Nor does Isaac, who's old enough to fight. He obeys because it's God's instruction. And it amazingly says in the Old Testament that Abraham gets up the very next day and does it. He goes the very next day. You know, you'd think he might, I'll have a little party, I'll hang out. We can do it next week. We can do it next month. But it tells us in the New Testament, it talks about this incident, and it says Abraham reasoned that God could bring back the dead. Even if I kill Isaac, God could bring him back to life again. But it was not necessary, right? God stopped him. Do you have any idea where it was that God told Abraham to go? He tells him to go to a place called Horeb. No, that's not right. Moriah. I'm sorry. Mount Moriah. Sorry. Moriah. Where is Mount Moriah? Do you have any idea? Josephus doesn't tell you. It's Jerusalem. It's the place where the temple's going to be eventually. A father is going to put his son to death in obedience, but he gets stopped. 2,000 years later, a father is going to send his son to death, and he's not going to get stopped. The father is going to send the son. It's the same place. See, this just blows my mind that, of course, God knows what's going to happen, right? God knows everything. He's present in all times. He uses places. Places are important. He gives you like trailers that give you coming attractions, you know, and give you a preview of something that's coming. He gives us previews of things that are coming. He has the Passover, which is a preview of Jesus. He has Isaac and Abraham, a preview of Jesus. Yes, Colin.
In the book, Josephus mentions, or as you call it, he mentions that when Isaac was about to be sacrificed or killed, if you will, God called out. And I thought that was interesting because I recall an angel saying it in the Old Testament.
Well, and here's the thing. Many people debate about this. The church fathers talked about this a lot. Often we see a personage called the messenger of the Lord, or Joshua sees someone who calls himself commander of the armies of the Lord. Abraham gets 3 visitors, right? And 2 of them go on, but one of them stays behind. And the visitor says, "Shall we keep from Abraham what we are planning to do?" Many people believe these are appearances of Jesus before the incarnation. Because, of course, he exists from all eternity. And that he appeared, and that it was whenever God appears to someone, that it's Jesus. But sometimes it's referred to as the angel of the Lord. So it's not necessarily mutually exclusive. Now, I want want to go back. You still have your timelines out. Oh, so something interesting, and maybe you didn't notice this at the beginning of your Josephus. There's a timeline. I'm going to give you some dates that are slightly different than the timeline, partly because more research and partly because it's a more accepted date. I would like you to take the same paper and about 1450, the Exodus. And then, while some people have really good geography skills and some people have geography skills, while we have your map out, would you please label Egypt? Just anywhere down, you know where Egypt is, but you're at this end of the Mediterranean. And Israel, where it says Palestine. You can label it Palestine if you want to.
Where's Israel? On the right side of the Red Sea?
Yeah, right. The southern part. Up here is Phoenicia. And down here is right here along the coast.
Is it spelled I-S-R-E-A-L?
A-E-L.
A-E.
Israel. But we say Israel, don't we? We say it
It is,
like you spelled it. But
it is real.
it is real. Okay. That was more time than I meant to spend on that, but it's very important. It's a very important because I don't know that there is anything more important than learning about God and his history. But let's talk a little bit about Italy now, because we also are going to be reading about Rome, and we're gonna you can put your map away, and you can put your timeline away, but I want you to get a different page out. We're gonna add something to the page that is the one that starts with 1,000 at the top. And does it go down to 500?
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to get that page out. We're going to add something to that page in a minute. I have a ginormous map of Italy. Oh, is it going to not? Oh, it is. All right. Hang on. Oh, don't do it. Oh, there you go. Hurrah. So the first section that I had you read in the Dorothy Mills book was a little bit about what Italy is like. What is Italy? And you can kind of see it on the map here. What does Italy have a lot of?
Mountains.
Oh, and you could get can you get your reading questions out too?
We don't.
Oh, that's right. I knew he didn't, but I forgot you didn't either. That's fine. I don't even remember what our reading questions were, so we're just going to wing it. It says, and I think this is kind of interesting, on the very beginning of our Dorothy Mills book. Italy turns her face to the west, for the Apennines are very steep and rugged on their eastern side. See the Apennine Mountains? Italy is very mountainy. Greece is mountainy too. Italy is very mountainy. The Apennines are very steep and rugged on the eastern side, but slope more gently in the plains to the west. So do you see what she means when she says Italy points towards the west?
Mm-hmm.
Italy, the people settled along the coast here, had mountains blocking them. Not that they didn't go to Greece, not that they didn't have comings and goings, but the general turn of Italy is towards the west. Greece is towards the east. Think about it. Let's get this map in. Look at Italy and Greece. Look how Greece kind of points towards the east and Italy points towards the west. Like the general thrust of one is one direction and the thrust of the other. I know it sticks towards the east, but since there's mountains blocking this way, the general look, the general trend is towards the west. That's going to be really important for Italy's history. What about the north? What's to the north? Do you remember? Oh, it's on the map, isn't it? Below. It's in big letters.
Gulf or Alps.
The Alps. The Alps. The mountains of, Switzerland. Very, very tall. Very, very rugged. Not impossible to go over, but not convenient to go over either. So, and she said in the book something interesting. It's easier to get into Italy over them than it is to get back the other way because of the steepness. That meant that early people came down into Italy, but it was really hard for the Italians to get out. Make sense? Once you're in, you're in. So where are they going to point towards? Not towards the north. They're going to have more doings with the south. Because going north is hard. Going east is hard because of mountains. Going north is hard because of mountains, right? Going south and going west, easier. That's the direction we're going to go. Look how close they are to Africa. Have you ever thought about that? Look, we have a scale. Do you not have a scale? Oh. That's awful. Oh, I need to flatten my maps out. Sicily is sort of a stepping stone, isn't it? Italy is not very far from Africa. It's just hard to remember that, Africa and Europe meet almost right there.
I don't remember what show it was. Sorry to interrupt again.
No, that's fine.
I remember it was a funny history cartoon I saw, and it was like for war or something, and then like a bunch of the soldiers all huddle onto Sicily, and then from like above Italy, they like had a bunch of ropes pulling back Italy, and then they let go, they released it, so the boot kicked Sicily,
Oh.
and they attacked Africa.
Yes, which is going to happen basically. So the start of Roman history is a legend. Right from the very beginning, we start with a legend. Now, do you remember, there was a guy named Aeneas. Aeneas is the guy who travels to Italy to found a town named Alba Longa here. Where did he come from?
Trojan War.
The Trojan War. He was a Trojan escapee. Now this is kind of interesting because the Trojans lost the war. The Italians, the Romans, traced their heritage back to the losing side instead of the winning side, which is kind of interesting. But, and hopefully, especially if you guys take class with me next year, you'll both be high school, won't you? But you're both in 8th grade? And next year is the year we read the Iliad and the Odyssey. And you will find out that the Trojans tend to have characters, some of them that are a little more sympathetic. Hector being one. But, yeah, interestingly, trace their heritage back to Troy and back to Aeneas, whose mother is Venus, Aphrodite. Pretty cool heritage.
Yeah.
Not Mars, interestingly, because, you think of the Romans as being fighting all the time. Aeneas came after the Trojan War. He conquered, kind of assimilated himself with these guys living in Latium, King Latinus, the Latins. And eventually he had descendants named Romulus and Remus. Their grandpa had been booted out of the kingdom of Alba Longa by his nasty brother. Those brothers. Always booting you out of your kingdom. Seems like there's a lot of stories where this happens. Anyway, and he shuts up the nasty uncle, great uncle, shuts up his niece into a tower so she can't have any children, so that the line of the true heirs will stop. However, walls and towers don't stop gods, do they?
No.
So now we get Mars. Mars is the dad of Romulus. So yeah, Aphrodite and Mars, both in their heritage. Wow. He gets very, very angry. And what do you do in the ancient world with children that you don't want?
Throw them out.
You throw them out. Which is just horrible. But, you know, the Romans are just throwing kids out left and right. The Greeks, too. They throw Romulus and Remus out, but there's a problem. They throw them out on the banks of this river called the Tiber. And it was flooding, but the flooding was going down. And they just kind of tossed them there and hoped that the water would carry them away. But the water went down and they were just left high and dry. And they're crying because they're babies, you know. And who helps them out?
A wolf.
A wolf. A wolf, supposedly, nurses them. And in your book, you see a very famous statue of the wolf, right? The she-wolf of the Capitol. I thought about bringing, I had so much stuff I was bringing today, I just didn't bring my art book. Maybe I'll bring it next time. Now, I found something out just last year, which just rocked my world, because I did not know this. The wolf statue is an old, ancient, I mean, it's all ancient, is a very old Roman statue. The children were added in the Renaissance to give it a little more ambiance. The two children underneath are not ancient. They are Renaissance additions because they thought that would be cool. It was just the wolf. And it was assumed that this was representative of the wolf that nursed Romulus and Remus. So they get found by a shepherd. They always do, right? Mm-hmm. These children. And get raised and drive their great uncle out and put their grandpa back on the throne. Go out to found a city. Tell me briefly why the city gets named Rome and not Rheims.
Because Romulus kills Remus.
Romulus kills Remus.
After he jumps over the walls or something.
Jumps over as well. There's two stories, and they could both be true if any of the stories are true. One is that they were looking for omens, and one way that the Etruscans, the people who had lived in Etruria before the Latins came, before the Romans came, were very into looking at bird signs, you know, like for prophecy and omens. Oh, an eagle came on the right, that's a good sign. Oh, a crow came on the left, that's a bad sign. I'm kind of making that up, but that was the general idea. And the idea is that Remus saw 6 eagles first, but Romulus saw 12 eagles second. So then they're arguing. Well, I saw more. Well, I saw them first. Like, not that you would ever argue with a brother, but you just kind of picture 2 brothers in the backseat of a car on a long car ride, you know. You touched me. Well, I had it first. Well, you've had it long enough. This is what was happening. I saw 6. Well, I saw 12. Well, I saw them first. Well, I saw more. Okay, that has happened. In addition, they say that Romulus is building his wall and Remus not only jumped over the wall, but made some snide comment. Like, oh, that's a good wall. It's really going to keep people out while he jumps over. Romulus kills him and says, thus may it happen to all who, you know, try to breach my walls of my new city. Not a good start. Yeah. Not a good start. So the timeline that you have out, I would like you to add about quarter of the way down, 753 BC. Founding of Rome. Do we know for sure that's when it was? No, but that is tradition, and we will learn it. Founding of Rome. I'm going to peek over Colin's shoulder to see what else we've already put on there. Oh, Lycurgus gives laws to Sparta. Oh, this is not very long after the Olympic Games. In fact, it's only 20-some years after the Olympic Games. So it kind of gives you an idea of what's going on. We will be adding to this as we go through Israel's history and see what's happening in Israel at the same time too. The Romans called this their year one. This is where time begins for them. Do you remember where time began for the Greeks? What is their year one?
Did they do Olympics?
The Olympics, 776. So you see that their years would be very close. Do you have any idea where Israel counts years from? Creation. This is like year 6,000 something for them. I mean, all of these people use the modern calendar because it would be impossible to have dealings with the rest of the world. But for Jews, their religious calendar, it's in the 6,000s because they go from creation. And where do we go from?
Birth of Christ.
Birth of Christ. What you count your first year is important, right? It shows what you honor. They honor Romulus and Remus. And I believe, did we talk about, did we talk about their getting, no, we just read chapters 1 through 3. Okay. So for next time, let me grab my notes here. Oh, you can put timelines and stuff away. We're not going to add anything else today. I'm done with my. And like I said, I'm going to ask you. We're probably going to have briefer writing assignments for the next 6 weeks, or I will give you longer time for them, because the reading is just a little heavier. All right. And there was just no way to I didn't want to spend longer on this, and I was trying to make it so that this book and this book would get to the same place at the same time, which wasn't easy. So in the Mills Rome book, I would like you to read chapters 4 and 5, which in my book, which yours appear to be just like mine, is pages 26 through 63. Now I realize that's getting close to 40 pages. But there's pictures. All right. And we're going to read, this coming week, we're going to read about the first stage of Roman history. Roman history has 3 stages. First stage, kings. We have kings. Romulus is their first king. And this week you're going to read about stories about their kings and why they stopped having kings. Okay? Then after that, we're going to look at stage 2, which is the Roman Republic. You mentioned that we get democracy from the Greeks, which is very true. Their governmental system. But we also borrow heavily from the Romans. We are a republic, right? Because we are too big. We're not a city-state of Greece that has 6,000 people. We elect people to represent us. That's exactly what the Romans did. And the Romans lived under a republic for 400 or 500 years. And then the third phase is empire, Roman emperors. And we'll talk about that last. So read that about the kings. And then in the Josephus book, please read chapters 21 through 38. And as you have already found out, that sounds like a lot of chapters, but some of the chapters are only a page long. And chapter 21 starts on page 60, and chapter 38 ends on page 122, so it's about 60 pages, which is honestly about what I just had you read. But your Mills reading is a little longer. Okay. We cannot leave without hearing a poem. Well, I'm not going to read one of the Egypt ones today. Oh, by the way, Rome, we're going to hear about this over and over and over, and this goes along with one of the poems I'm going to read. Well, actually, let's bring out the big guns. I have a map that's just Rome. Awesome. Dorothy Mills tells us that Rome was founded at a great place. First of all, it's on a river. What's good about founding a city on a river?
You always get water even during a battle.
You always get water. Something else that makes rivers very convenient.
You can transport things on
Transportation, okay? Water and transportation. And this particular river feeds out into the Mediterranean Sea. I'm sorry. I'm sitting like this so that... Okay. There. Can you see better now? Okay. It feeds out into the Mediterranean Sea, and you can take boats up and down. And Rome, this area where Rome is founded has 7 hills. And these words in bluish purple here are the 7 hills. What's good about hills if you're founding a city?
You can put towers on it.
Put towers on them. You can see a longer distance. You can fortify the hills. So it was an excellent choice. Whether it was Romulus and Remus who decided to build a city here. Dorothy Mills tells us that excavations have shown that there was a city there before 753 BC. So I thought it would be fun and instructive to see if we could learn the 7 hills of Rome. And so I'm going to try to remember to read this poem every week and see if we can learn it, because I have a poem for the 7 hills of Rome. Here we go. Rome was built on 7 hills. Each hill had a name. See if you can learn them. Pretend that it's a game. The Viminal, the Aventine, the Quirinal, the Esquiline. To these please add the Palatine, the Caelian, the Capitoline. Rome was built on 7 hills, and there begins the story of the famous Roman Empire and its eternal glory. Revelation talks about a city on 7 hills. 7 hills. So whenever you city of 7 hills, it's always Rome. So please remind me, I would like to read that poem every week. The Viminal, the Aventine, the Quirinal, the Esquiline. To these please add the Palatine, the Caelian, the Capitoline. All right, one more poem, and then we may pack up. Romulus and Remus. There's the wolf and the babies. Remus and Romulus, where have you been? Out in the forest, a wolf took us in. She fed us and nursed us just like her own, then gave us to shepherds until we were grown. Remus and Romulus, what will you be? The founders of Rome, 753 BC. They get better. You look doubtful. All right, I'm going to turn this off. Addison, see you next week.